I got a question for you, T.
Go ahead.
I thought Steve Nash was the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, so. By the way,
didn't Kyrie warn us? Didn't he say this? I mean,
yes, but then he walked that back.
Yeah,
if you recall,
he did.
He said initially, this is going back a few months ago, I don't really consider us to have a coach. It's a collaborative effort. And then he circled back to it, said, kind of came out wrong, not necessarily what I meant. You know, Steve is the coach, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing is, I don't disagree with this new structure, this new dynamic. Mm-hmm. James Harden's the point guard. Kyrie Irving's the two guard. James Harden was James Harden on Saturday against the Warriors. He handed out 16 assists. Watched some of the game. A little tough to watch. I mean, the Warriors they don't have a ton as we've outside of Steph. But I checked on. I was watching the Knicks too, but I watched a good chunk of the game. And the Nets offensively look like they have looked really this entire season, even before Harden came in. Now, it's complicated by the fact that Durant strained a hamstring. He's going to miss some time. Who knows how long, but they've only played 7 games together. So they're still trying to figure this out. But I thought it was interesting. And again, not in a really bad way, but just interesting when Kyrie Irving's like, I decided James Harden's the point guard.
It kind of felt like they were heading this way anyways, without Kyrie's admission of it, because in those first, 3 or 4 games that James Harden was playing with just KD, when Kyrie was still sitting out on his absence that he took at the beginning of the season, James Harden had triple doubles, man. He was diamond all day. I think the first game he had 12 assists or something like that. And even when Kyrie came back, remember we noticed it's like Kyrie had 3 assists in this game. And aren't you the point guard? But then you're busy criticizing Kyrie's lack of distribution skills with this big 3, and then you just glance over at the box score. It's like, oh, James Harden had 11. Mm-hmm. Oh, James Harden had 14 assists. We kind of knew this was going to happen anyways, and I think it helps James Harden, as I watched them play, in so many different ways. And I said this when they first started, when all 3, and again, you're right, they've only played 7 games together, but when they first started playing, it was like James Harden was taking a back seat. And then when it came to the fourth quarter, he gets freaky on you, starts doing what he does, step back 3-pointers, driving to the lane. He's conserved energy. He's been a distributor. I think it makes the most sense because out of the 3, the most natural distributor is James Harden. It's all he did in Houston. Yeah, I know we talk about the 3-pointers and the scoring at the rim and the free throws, but I mean, he also was close to averaging a triple-double for an entire season as well. So he's the best assister on this team. So it makes logical sense that they ultimately fell this way.
I agree. Listen, it's weird because you look at the Nets, and because Kevin Durant didn't play last year, because, as we've said a few times, they've only played 7 games together this year, and because Kyrie Irving didn't finish up in the bubble, missed some time with the shoulder, etc., while Kyrie Irving is in his second year with the Nets, it's not like he's really played a ton of games with the Nets. So maybe what I'm about to say is somewhat offset by that fact. I just wanted to point that out. But I do think that it's easier when you look at this in the most conventional sense. Like what's easier for Kyrie Irving to kind of, and everybody, not just Kyrie, but for all the Nets, and for the Nets to basically give the ball to Harden and let Harden be who he was in Houston, or to come to a new team and completely change how he plays while also adjusting to a new conference, new teammates, and new surroundings?
Yep.
The answer is the former.
And a rookie head coach.
Now, again, while James Harden was passing a lot early on as a Net, and he still is, clearly, he was still dominating the ball. He was the one doing most of the dribbling, so it's not that much of a recalibration of how they were playing when they first got him. Imagine a Popovich team or even a Spoelstra coach team that had the players making the decisions.
Yeah, or at least announcing the decisions. Right?
That's obvious.
I think
but
both.
the way he framed it, it made it seem like we were in practice one day, and I just turned to him. I said, "You're the point guard. I'm playing shooting guard. Let's go."
Yeah,
that's what I think happened.
It's
weird.
I haven't seen any response to this from Steve Nash. But I wonder what Steve Nash.
What's he going to say?
Exactly. That's my point. It's like, what can he say? Because it feels like what Kyrie was talking about at the beginning of the season, which we had just alluded to, that, it's going to be a collaborative effort. We're going to, get all the good minds. And that's basically Kyrie and KD and James Harden and Steve Nash together and figure out what's best. But usually these type of decisions, they come from the head coach, right? Somebody will notice it, a reporter or I don't know, an analyst will notice it, and then they'll ask, hey, Coach Nash, it looks like James Harden is playing more, point guard, the last couple of games. And then he'll say, yeah, we made the decision that James Harden is going to play point guard, and Kyrie is going to be the two. He's going to be the shooting guard. Mm-hmm. But it's like Kyrie just preemptively announces this. It's just,
and that's by design, by the way. I don't think for a second that's not a power play there by Kyrie Irving.
Who designed it?
That's a power play by Kyrie.
So Kyrie did this without having consulted with Steve Nash.
That's what I believe. I mean, that's honestly what I believe, because that's what he said. I got to take the man at his word, right? That's what he literally said.
That's right. He basically said we were in practice, and we said, you know what? You're gonna play point guard.
Yeah,
that's what it sounded like. It sounded like they were. That's how they came to this conclusion.
Yeah, as I read, quote, I said to him, you're the point guard, and I'm going to play shooting guard. Not that, we sat down and we looked at film, or, we got together at, midnight in a hotel after a game, and we just came, this is best for the Nets. No, Kyrie literally during practice said, all right, you're the point guard. I'm going to move over to the 2 spot. What's Steve Nash going to say? No?
Yeah,
and again,
right.
not a big deal, but it could be a big deal, because if there is a philosophical difference, and there should be on some level, even if it's the most rudimentary level, it's going to surface on some level, and it might bear its head at the most inopportune time, like the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals.
I hear you.
And at that point, do you have division?
Yeah,
you might.
I don't know. So let me back up for a second. First of all, are there really positions in basketball anymore? Like, doesn't matter. It's kind of like who gets the ball in the inbounds. It's like, all right, you can bring it up. All right, you bring it up. I mean, Draymond Green for the Warriors back in their heyday, he would bring the ball up the court every now and then.
By the way, I thought he ruptured. I thought he tore his ACL in that game.
Yeah, it looked like it.
Happy for him. He's all right.
Yeah. I mean, not that he's playing great, but he's still an important part of that
for sure.
That team.
For sure. He's a warrior. You don't want to see anybody go down, especially a guy like that.
But, think about the positionless nature of basketball these days.
Yep.
And it's kind of like whoever's in that who's in the zone, it feels like sometimes, who brings the ball up the court, who facilitates offense. And eventually, if the guy who's not the facilitator who's bringing the ball up the court, eventually he becomes the facilitator at some point. But let me flip this to the Lakers.
Okay.
Right. This last offseason, when Frank Vogel takes over as head coach, and they have Anthony Davis, and they have this roster it's pretty good, actually. And ultimately, they win a championship. It was announced early in the season, LeBron James is playing point guard, right? Remember this? Like, we all remember this. Because it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But he kind of does it anyway. So, I mean, do you even need to announce these type of things? Because ultimately, it's just going to happen. Just like it happened with the LA Lakers last year. LeBron James knew that he was in the best position. Well, the team would be in their best position if he was also a scorer, but also a facilitator, and used his playmaking ability to create space and opportunities for all of his teammates. And when we think about James Harden, that's what he is, right? He's a scorer. He's a natural scorer. So you don't necessarily want to take the ball out of his hands, but when Kyrie and KD are his teammates, you're okay to take the ball out of his hands. So put him in that position to do what he does great, which is facilitate, drive to the lane, kick, and find open shots for his teammates. It just makes the most sense, to be honest with you. Just like with LeBron last year, it made the most sense for him to play point guard, even though he's never really been a point guard.
Yeah, I'm with you. But keep in mind, the first question you asked me, do you need to announce the point guard? The answer is no.
No, you don't.
But if you elect to announce it, I prefer that the head coach is the one who delivers the message and not one of the players.
Doesn't it feel like it's Kyrie just kind of saving face a little bit? Like,
in what way?
Because he's the man. Like, the point guard's the man in the NBA. Right? You know what I mean? Think about the
saving face for whom? I don't understand. What do you mean?
For himself. Because all of a sudden he's off the ball. All of a sudden he's not the primary ball handler for the Nets.
Well, I think it frees him up a little bit, because Kyrie's natural skill set is scoring.
But Kyrie is also I'm going to shake you up 15 times, cross you up, either create for somebody else or get a free shot for myself, right? He's not doing that anymore. He's now in the runner role, right, where he's running around screens and finding open spots. It's just a different, like, it just looks different for him.
But he's flourishing, so I don't worry about that. Really, quite frankly, Tink, I don't worry about really anything with the Nets. The only thing I worry about is their defense.
Yeah. But then why announce it? Like, why?
We'd have to ask Kyrie Irving that. I'm going to go back to what I said 3 minutes ago. I think it's a little subtle flex of power right there. That's what I think.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I don't know for sure that I'm right.
But why does he need to do that, I guess, is the question.
Because he's a uniquely wired human being. That's why. Why did he need to do anything? Or not anything, but why does he do some of the things that he does? Why did he feel compelled at the start of the season to say, we don't have a head coach?
Yeah.
I mean, who does that?
Yeah.
Even in a positionless modern NBA, like, why would you feel compelled to announce that? Just because you want to prove that you got more juice than the coach? I didn't think that was a great look. Why did he elect not to respond to Steve Nash's text messages when he went AWOL? I don't know, because he probably thinks that on some level, based on the pecking order within the franchise, that Steve Nash is a little bit of a peasant compared to Kyrie Irving. Like, I honestly believe that. Like, I don't
a Hall
think
of Famer. He's an all-timer.
I understand that,
There's
but
no way he could think that.
I don't think he's got a ton of respect for Nash as a coach. I just don't.
I mean,
and I can only judge him based on his actions and his words.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of reflected that. I'm not making that up.
I just feel like we all know that Steve Nash is learning on the fly.
For sure.
And he's getting input from D'Antoni and even Jacques Vaughn, who was the interim last year. Like, he's getting input on how to be the head coach. And I don't think Kyrie thinks that. I think what Kyrie thinks is that he knows best. And he needs control in a sense. And I get it. It's fine. But as long as it's not affecting the team, which it doesn't seem to be doing, obviously,
no.
then let him be Kyrie. If he wants to talk like that and he wants to be in, the messenger of all things that happen inside the locker room or the organization for the Nets, just let him be that way. As long as it keeps him happy, then it's all good by me.
But I just think there's a big difference now. Again, it's innocuous now, fairly innocuous now. It's not a big deal now, and I'm not trying to make it out to be a big deal. But I do think that if the ultimate seat of leadership, right, if it's a little distorted, if it's a little blurred, again, it might not matter February 15th. It might not even matter March 15th. It might matter when you're playing the Sixers in the conference finals, or you're playing the Lakers or the Jazz or whomever in the NBA finals. Like, you can't tell me that you're going to win a championship without a coach. I mean, I have a hard time believing that. Not like the 1950s drill sergeant. No, I'm not saying that. It's clearly an evolution of the position and an exchanging of ideas. There's no question. Just based on the money that these guys make, the influence they have, it's not the same dynamic, nor should it be, and it never will be. But there has been a marginalization of Steve Nash. From the moment that Steve Nash was hired, there has been a marginalization of Steve Nash's role as head coach of the Nets. That's what I've heard. That's what I've seen. And that's what I feel. Now, they're so talented that it's not a big deal today. Like I said, not going to be a big deal tomorrow. Not going to be a big deal next month. All I'm saying is it could be. It could be down the road. Because all the great teams, and if you get to if you're one of the final two teams standing, there's so many more things other than just, than talent. There's cohesion. There's, a belief in how the coach allocates roles. There's an adherence to the system without deviating from it for personal gain. Like,
yeah,
and I don't know. I believe that it'll be okay, but there's some warning flares that I'm just pointing out.